Street. Welcome to the Striving Novelist Support Group on Story Street. We're we had a bit of a break for holidays and for some uh, travel, people being out of the area. So we are back, and obviously ready to support. So um, if you didn't see last time, I think the last one we did was our uh, was our subs and grinders, submission party. So we might talk about the results of that. I don't know. Some people have whenever we do our rounds here. We're actually, because of the gap, probably the next submission party is going to be next week. So we're going to be posting our article on some submission opportunities like we do every month here, just to follow up on that. So if you guys keep an eye on our newsletter, and you'll be able to get the you know monthly submission opportunities that we kind of collect. Otherwise, yeah, uh, let's uh, let's go around the horn here. So, who wants to go first on our weekly updates? All right, voluntolding.
I'll go. I'll go.
Okay.
I'll go. Um, so I had a pretty good week given the productivity that I've had for the last 6 months or even year. Uh, I did a lot of planning, which is essential to my process, and I did some writing. Uh, I don't know how productive the writing was, but I do know that if I just keep producing, that I will end up with something uh, good. I had that confidence. And I've had an interesting thing happen in my life this week as well. We had a good talk in my writing group about writing from your own experiences, using your experiences as a part of your writing. And uh, and I'm 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 writing a chapter where the 15-year-olds encounter mortality for the first time in their lives. And and it's interesting because this week my son, who was in Ukraine, had a missile strike in his neighborhood that killed a dozen people. And and I've faced mortality before, but not uh, you know this close. And I'm I'm trying to work I'm trying to work that in. Uh, and so uh, that's a personal thing, but it's also a thing that is going to be a part of my writing. Uh, so that was my week. It's a big week for me.
James is obviously okay, I assume. But did anybody that they know over there that's or personal?
No,
I mean,
nobody in the school where he's teaching
okay.
was killed. And the students don't live in that area. So uh, there were some people he knows who were in buildings that were, but not in the buildings that were hit. Uh, uh, the missiles are such that the radius of damage is beyond the places that are hit. But it's scary. Even though he's been in Ukraine for 2 years, it's scary to have a missile. He's heard missiles before, and of course he's heard like detonations of missiles. Uh, that's a pretty common thing, but uh, and he's heard missiles fly over his place. But this is the first time one has been, quite close, and so it is, I talked to him, and it is, he's maybe scared for the first time. Uh, and that's part of it. That's part of facing mortality, is the people around you facing that as well. Uh, and so it is something personal. It's a lot that I'm trying to make it, I'm trying to turn it into something for
I
me
can
anyway.
I can
Oh,
follow that sentiment um, about writing from your personal experience. Uh, I was out traveling with my family. We don't get spring break; we get Holy Week. So I was traveling with my husband and my kids, and but I had a deadline today to write a flash fiction story based on something paranormal, and I used something that happened to me uh, coming 8 years ago. We were traveling and my son got lost in a small town in Italy called Lucca in the pedestrian streets, and there were so many avenues we could have taken, and it took us. He was lost for 20 minutes. A woman saw me screaming in the piazza, and then she found my son and brought him back. He had just kept walking and walking and walking and walking, and so he wasn't in the immediate perimeter. So I think I've carried that trauma for a long time. It was really stressful, and I always told my husband, he wasn't with me. He was back home. That he missed out on that because by the time I called him, we had already found him. So, but it was really interesting because I had never written about that experience, and it's not the first time that I use something that has happened in my life to make it into. I mean, I just morphed it into fiction, but I always. It's not only that it feels very raw and very emotional and true in a sense because you've been through that emotion before, but it's also cathartic. I think that I needed to talk about this, and the only drawback about this challenge that I signed up for is that it was only 600 words, and this story has more space to it. So I'll be waiting for the results, which are at the end of May, and I'll be working on the story. I want to make it longer. I want to make it really to bring out everything that it has to give, and not just have to encapsulate it in 600 words. So that was me.
I think speaking from like that's always a good idea if you're working for from a prompt or from a contest. Like, it's not just about it doesn't have to be the final thing that you're making. Like, those sorts of things, I reused some old ideas that I had in, in some writing prompts and writing classes and stuff before. And I know we've had several publications from previous writing prompts, Elisa and Michelle. Just that Jack is just getting your rework it. Like, it's still even if it's not what you wanted it to be, it's got value. So I think that it's interesting though that you're going into that thinking that way rather than writing writing to it and then coming back to it later.
I'm going to jump in now too, because I've been doing some repurposing, rewriting. Um, since I wrote that recently, I did that article on story endings based on that one story that I almost didn't get published. And the guy was like, the editor sent me back some notes and basically told me to scrap the last line. And it made me go back this past week. I've been looking at some of my other stories that have been near misses. You mean or near publications where I've gotten some really positive feedback, but they're like almost, but not quite, not quite where it needs to be, or not quite what we're looking for. So I went back through some of those old stories and with fresh eyes, and I was able to cut things that I would not have cut before and rewrite areas. And then I've submitted them to other places. And one of them in particular, I feel so much more confident about now, just going back. And I think it has kind of, the whole process has come from um like judging those short flash fiction contests and the conversations that come from that, the conversations in our writing group, when my writing group, when we are discussing someone else's work and what's working, what's not working. Um, I just feel like I'm constantly learning and going back. So that's kind of where my this last week was.
Um, so I had a publication from our last Subs and Grinders. Um, I don't like I just had little micro fictions to send out because I don't have like a short story right now to send out, and that's one of my goals is I need to get something wrote. But so I got a 50-word story published, and that was fun. I Those are just fun to do. Like I just enjoy them, so that was really cool to just like, oh look, I wrote this little 50-word thing, um, and it was able to be published, so that was cool. Um, but we've started getting together, a couple of us, and kind of body doubling, and I am so much more successful at writing when that happens. Um, so I am really grateful for that, and it has allowed me to make progress on my novel again, when I had really stalled out for a while. So I'm just very happy to be making progress. And I'm going to try to balance that out and get like a short story wrote as well so that I have something to send, because right now I don't have any drafts of anything, so there's nothing for me to like send out, and I need to get working on that.
Well, obviously great news, and our we'll be celebrating that next week as well. But yeah, great job submitting what you've got. Personally, I have been continuing just my I have not been doing it every day, but just trying to get some casual writing maybe in the morning and less often trying to do like in the evening, like write a story of just like of the day. Mostly they're just kind of ideas or just um, scramble like plot I thoughts. They're not really stories. Although you probably could like sometimes do 100-word stories like we've been seeing with our contests and everything. Um, but yeah, I think I'd I want to probably do a little bit more. It's been a little bit light the last couple of weeks, but my wife also is finishing up her last class for her degree, so it's been a little bit kind of tight with the baby and everything. So um, looking like after this week, maybe we keep saying that though. That's always the thing. Like the future is easier to commit to than the present. But I think I'm just going to keep it as low key and low commit as possible and maybe I'll join in on the kind of the writing Zoom uh, next week or something to start rolling again. So um, yeah, finding great success by actually trying is pretty like a lot of people try to write, but like it's I think that the theme that I'm coming around to seeing here a lot is just that showing up, like pushing it out for publication and just continuing. Like two rejections is not an answer. That it's actually, finding actually showing up every week or every month on our thing and pushing something out. People get published that way. So um, yeah.
Um,
Uh,
I follow this one writer, and I think um, took a writing class with her online. Um, not too long ago, but she posted today that she had finally been accepted to a certain literary magazine after 23 rejections just from that magazine. It was a poetry submission. But like we always talk about, oh, well, this story got rejected X number of times and then finally got accepted. This, she's been trying to get in this magazine. And it's just kind of good to remember. And she's a pretty well published poet and author. So got to stay positive and just keep trying.
I like that's interesting, and it's probably something. I'm sure that's something everybody wants to be in the New Yorker anyway, but like for poetry, it's probably more common to have like a, I guess maybe a magazine to try several times because I don't know. I would probably have my favorite magazines to. I wouldn't be unhappy about being published in. But that's fantastic. Also, part two of writing is sending it. I'm reminded of Kurt Vonnegut's character Kilgore Trout, who would always write stuff and then tear it up and throw it away. Like we spend an awful lot of time writing stuff and then we don't. We're too scared to actually go out and give it a place in the world. So,
I
anyways,
I I I started out writing by hand, and I burned the first several hundred pages of writing that I did when I was younger. I had a bonfire, uh, and and I did it in the middle of the night with a friend of mine, uh, who ended up having a lifetime career in writing, and I was 19, I think, and I just took everything I had and in a milk crate, and I had a Gatorade bottle full of gasoline, and I drove to a gravel pit that had a place next to it that you could park, and people park there sometime to, you know, I don't know, get drunk or high or whatever. And I I drove out into the middle of that space, that felt very empty, and I put the milk crate down and I poured gasoline all over it and I lit it. And as soon as I lit it, it went, like, and and then a pair of headlights came on about 100 yards away, and it freaked me out, and I
wow,
ran away from it. And I thought, what a
you almost had
strange,
a
like,
Alice's restaurant moment there.
it just sort of like, I guess my first thought was maybe they're cops, because sometimes there were cops there. And, I thought, this is a stupid idea. Uh, but not for the reason that it was a stupid idea. And then I ran away.
It was probably a
Uh,
literary agent just about to ask you if they wanted to see your
yeah,
work.
yeah, probably so.
It
Yeah,
was
that's a
future
nice story.
Jack who had got
Yes.
in his time machine and went back in time and was trying to get to that before the crucial, story that had some sort of Bill and Ted destiny to it could be go up in flames. That was future Jack in your Jack mobile, in your time machine mobile, whatever.
My DeLorean.
Yes. So um keep
That's a
your eyes
great
peeled for a DeLorean.
that's a great story, Jack. You should write that one up too.
That one I think would be a great ending for that. So well, speaking of trusting your work and giving it life or finding a place for it, like something that we were talking, some of us were talking about last offline, different conversation was the self publishing. Like, yes, a little late to the conversation party, but it's been something that's been around for like 20 years now. I mean, it's been around forever, but before that, it wasn't really. It was more of a. It had kind of a stink to it. Like after e-reading came out and became popular, it seems like there's been a lot more opportunity for people to be successful. We've seen successful writers doing that, and at the same time that that's been going on, I don't know, we were talking about the fact that like the publishing industry has been kind of merging into a black hole, like, all of the mergers and the big, the big X number is now the big X number minus one, and then the X number minus two. Like they keep like collapsing in on themselves, and there's fewer places. It seems like the business of it, from what I've heard from people, has been having some issues. I mean, there's you hear rumblings of financial difficulties with these places, and a lot of times it's like the Hollywood thing, like especially the big ones, the indie presses. Obviously, having some smaller, more independent publishing places out there is great, and I love the fact that there's these varieties out there, and people should look into those. But as far as the big places go, it's like the Hollywood model as opposed to Sundance. You have, oh, we sold a lot of that book, so we want to sell that exact book again. So we're looking for exactly that, rather than trying to be where the readers are going to be, or finding the thing that the readers are going to like next. And that can be frustrating, trying to battle your way past the ogres at the gate. So I think, I don't know.
Yeah, and I've been querying, as I've told you, I have two things that are finished, and one of them we're querying out, uh, my joint project, and I always find it not. I mean, ever since I started, I didn't know about comps before I started the program. I didn't know that was a thing, and it's difficult for me to get to wrap my head around the fact that you need to find something similar to your work to be able to make it, or to make it marketable, because you shouldn't try to be like anybody else. Like, and it most of the work is like, it's like this but mixed up with that, but not as specifically. I've For example, for Synchronicity, I haven't found a YA novel about friends, like a group of friends. I don't know why. Just seems like the closest thing to what I wrote is the Breakfast Club. uh, this was five kids who became friends. Same thing that happens in my story, but I researched and researched looking for something similar, and there was no book that I could actually take from. So it says, so my comp was like Breakfast Club meets Alice in Wonderland. That was my easiest way to explain what my novel was about. But I don't know why. I I mean, I understand, because when you're selling it to publishers, you said you can put it next to this other book. But I guess if we go back to the biggest blockbusters, before Harry Potter would have been next to what, like, and what became, and then people start writing about wizards, and then you have vampires, and then you have zombies, and it's always a trend. But I think that it's even bigger if you're the first one and you bring in the trend. Anyway, that's just top of my mind thing, that comps for me are really hard. I think that because I like to think that writing should be, and I know that there's no story that's original. Everything has been said and it's just a reworking of things. But finding a specific book in your genre, in your category, that you can actually relate to, I think it's super. At least for me, it's been very hard.
Lisa, I
Even
think
in
it's
the other
hard for
projects.
everyone. I've been listening to that the shit no one tells you about writing podcast when they
Hmm.
send query letters, and there's so much discussion and disagreement about comps. These newer authors list in their query letters, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of debate about which ones they chose, if they're too old, if they're not, if they're too lofty, or if they're, all these different, and it seems to be a constant, like, not an argument between the hosts, but discussion, like what they think is the right one. So I don't think it's just hard for you. I really think it's just a difficult process.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think if I told you this, but I have a 11 years ago I wrote the original version of Synchronicity. It was third person, 8 characters instead of 5, whatever, and I self-published it, and I learned a lot, because my mentor, my mentor here in my hometown, Mexican like me, his daughter wrote. Um, self-published books, and she was really a really successful self-published author, but in a completely different genre. And he was the one who like sort of mentored me and gave me the path and whatever. But I learned that I jumped in. I hired a freelance editor, and I and then what happened? And I don't know. I don't think I've ever shared this story, but um, I got I sent the book into this, I think it's called NetGalley, that you can upload it and people can download the book for free, and they pay you with a review. So I started getting reviews in Amazon and in Goodreads, and there were some really horrifying reviews, especially from younger girls. They even there was this pair of girls who had this conversation, and they were reading at the same time, and they were like analyzing the book and just saying these horrible things. And my daughter was, many people have asked me through the years, because I read a lot, why I don't use Goodreads, and I say that I have PTSD, because all of those comments were in Goodreads. So I couldn't even close, but I couldn't close the page because there were these other people who had written really nice things. So what I did was I asked my daughter, my now 16-year-old, I said, can you please go into my Goodreads account and get all the names of the people who said nice things, because when the next version gets published, I want to send them like a signed copy, because they were the first supporters in a sense. But I couldn't do it myself. I had to have someone else do it for me, because it was, um, yeah, it's hard. It's hard receiving the negative feedback. That was my main, and I think I'm more prepared now for when that happens, because, and maybe not even reading them, just like being oblivious to whatever people say about your book, because you're never going to, I mean, and I've had the discussion with a friend of mine who reads a lot. Everything that I like, every book that I like, he hates, and it's like, oh my god, how can you hate this book? So and we're just two different types of readers, and so I understand perfectly. And it's not the quality of the book, it's, I think, many times it's what the person receives. So, and nobody's going to see it the same. Every reader brings their own baggage and their own interpretation of things into the story, even if it's not what you wrote. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
my self-publishing story. It like journey. It didn't last long. I took it out very quickly, like a month or 2 months, and I've been working on it for 11 years. So, and it's a completely different story now. But that's yeah. I don't know if I've ever told you this story before, but yeah, that was my journey.
I think that's
That's one of the things that's really tough about publishing, is dealing with the feedback, and you have to deal with that regardless of how you publish, or you have to ignore it regardless of how you publish. But it's a different experience if your book is, published and there's a lot of copies, and you're contractually obligated to let them continue distributing it no matter what. And it's one of the challenges we talk about very early in writing, very early in this podcast, was um, with submissions. Like, it's part of the business of writing to submit, and the writing impulse, the the impulse that brings us to write, isn't necessarily compatible with the impulse to publish, and it's it's sometimes incompatible. writing is kind of a personal, private endeavor at its generation, at the beginning of it, and it's very public to try and ask people to read it. And then in self-publishing, there's actually a lot of publishing that is not just putting it out there. There's promotion, and there's packaging, and there's the choices about how much you charge, and choices about where you promote and how you promote, and there's developing an authorial persona. All of those things aren't native to the writer. It's not our native language, or it may not be our native language. And that's part of what's challenging about self-publication, is just understanding the facets of publishing that we aren't really maybe even interested in doing as
And it takes so
authors.
much time away from your writing time because you have to educate yourself. But the other side of that too is traditional publishers. We learned, I know when I went to an agent's weekend and write an editor's weekend for my master's program, I learned that the traditional publishers don't always invest in you like they used to. So there are a lot of writers who end up doing their own marketing, doing their own self, promotion, and um,
Yeah.
so it's there's a financial aspect of it. There's the credibility issue. Do you feel more credible if you go with a traditional publisher?
Yeah.
There's status involved in that versus I have a friend who's was published traditionally. Now she wants to do self-publication just because she's going to make more money now that she has a following, which she might not have had she self-published first. So there's so many different factors, I think, that are worth discussing.
That's
And
Yeah,
that,
actually,
I've thought about this a lot because I for me, for my personality, for my confidence levels, I know that I need to go through an agent and do either an indie publisher, something like that, because I in order to deal with um I have to have my own validation in at least the agent believes in it. At least the person who the publisher who bought it believes in it. And so then if it goes online and has horrible reviews, I have something to hold on to. These people who I trust and respect believed in it. So and that's maybe, I don't know, that's maybe pathetic. I
I
don't care. It's just the truth
no.
because it's it allows me to have that self-preservation and protection. And I know that marketing, all of that is not, it's not for me. I don't enjoy it. I will work really, really hard if I'm published and it ends up falling on me. I will do my absolute best. But is it natural? Will I hopefully at least have someone who can say, do this, this, and this, and this? Um, I hope so, because on my own, I'm gonna flounder or just be like, this isn't my thing. I don't I write, I don't know how to do this. It's not for me. So for me, that's but anyone who self-publishes, I'm impressed because you wear all the hats, you do all the things, and you must have a lot of self-confidence and a lot of belief in yourself, and that's fantastic. Um, but it's not for me. Because I don't have those traits.
I think that's the some of the frustrating parts of this, though, is that the reason that you want to be published instead of doing it yourself is for all of the what they're supposed they when they try and pick you up, the selling thing is that we do all of this promotion for you, and just by nature of it being a published book, there is some, you know, halo effect of being in that catalog, right? That will help it to travel some places at least. But like that they don't by default set you up with a book tour or set you up with publicity at all. And like, yes, some of the smaller presses will be more active on your behalf. Um, and I know some of the writers that I've talked to have talked about that. Why they chose to go with a smaller press was because of that, even if it didn't have the logo on it. But like, if you still have to do your own publicity, that's one thing that I've heard a lot of indie authors say is, if I have to do it my own anyway, why don't I just like do it all my own and cut out the middleman? And there is a lot of frustration. I think the truth is kind of in between. There's nuance. Like, there's certain advantages that a publication or a publishing house, just by being a publishing house, will have in getting it distributed. Um, but that's not the be all and end all, and you can be successful without it. And like the fact that you could make $1 a book on 100,000 on 40,000 copies, or you could make $10 a book on a half that many copies or less, and you still end up ahead. I think there are some authors, especially ones who have already had that are thinking of self-publishing because they get to keep more of the check. But yeah, like, even the validation, like the fact that there are fewer big publishing houses anymore, it's one person's opinion going through 3 imprints that actually is like whether or not you get published with them or not, right? It's not necessarily like, you can't take that personally. You can't necessarily believe that anymore. So I don't know.
Yeah, and when you another thing that I had in the back of my mind, when you query, they ask you if you have an Instagram account, a web page, and Twitter, like if you have a handle. I don't have. I have my personal. I don't have my author one. I think I need to start having some sort of presence as an author. So that's something else that, and again, that's, I mean, I do like social media and being online, but we're not experts anymore. So one of the things that I talk to my kids is like, you're gonna have to help me out. You're gonna have to help me out with because they're the ones that have the know-how. I don't have TikTok, and I know that book talk is a very big thing. My daughter always says, "Mom, if you're ever gonna get published, you need to be on TikTok and you need to make content." And I think that that's hard for authors who are, I mean, it's a solitary job where you're yourself at a computer, and then you have to sell yourself to the world, and that's not something that everybody enjoys. But so it's, I don't know. I mean, hopefully, I not everybody needs to do that, but I some of the authors that I follow are very like active, and some others aren't. So it's gonna be hard to decide, but it's challenging that it's not as easy as before, that you got published and then you didn't have to do anything, not do anything, but do less work, and other people were there to help you. And now we have to be like self-taught in this new world, because it's not just the writing, it's also the promotion. So it's yeah, the journey doesn't stop when you finish the book, or even when you get an agent, or even when you get published. I think that the work is something that continues, and you have to be in it for the long run.
I think that there's a lot to be said for both. Like, there's more and more to be said for having some sort of independence, and like, publishing house goes under, and we've heard of writers who, like, publishing house was picked up their book and then they went under, and then their book is locked up in contracts with that publisher who's not publishing it, and they can't get it back. And like, what did they
Yeah,
do? Like,
John Fleming wrote a phenomenal, published a phenomenal first book, uh, and his first print sold out like that, and it was time to come out with a big second print, and the publisher disappeared, and he couldn't figure out uh, who to even buy his book from to get his book back. He had money to buy his book back, but he couldn't find anybody. It took him 20 years to get the rights to his book, uh, from from uh, from not from some publisher who wanted to hold on to it, but from like a black hole that wanted to hold on to it, and is it should have launched this career that it took him a long time to put together after that. It should have launched the notoriety and platform that it took him a while to put together after that. And it's a tragedy of a writer that ended well for John, but it started off as like a real challenge after getting what we all want, and that's a traditional publisher to publish our books. So it's fraught, and it's been fraught for a few decades, but it's fraught.
Yeah. So like there's having some independence, having something is to synthesize this, um, is has value. Like you want to have something that you can have your own mobility, your own legs to stand on, and not rely on whether or not they feel like helping you. Um, Even though that's supposed to be the agreement that you have. And there are some really great people. Obviously, a lot of people get into publishing and books and agenting and editing because they love books. But there's also a lot of, like, especially in the bigger book world, there's a lot of like businessing that kind of makes a lot of people, it turns people clueless. Um, the idea that they 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 have to grow, they have to whatever. And I think like having books, like I know Stephen King has self-published some things, and some other authors have, like, they still do like regular publishing things, and then they self-publish some things, and you could get like a patron group. Like there are popular writers, like some popular science fiction writers that I follow who have Patreon signups, and they share stuff. They end up becoming kind of a, there's almost like a, not like a fan club necessarily used to be, but there's kind of this sharing that's going on that people get to be intimately more connected with their writing process and their works in progress. And I think that's, people are doing that. Like if you have to do that, I don't know. Like there's an awful lot to be said for still the idea of getting your name on the plate, right? Getting your getting your ego validated, getting your, that's a personal thing, I think, more so than the book thing. But there's also a, like, more and more, especially with the troubles that they're having with their business level, there's a lot to be said for finding some more independent ways of being a writer as well.
I also think the traditional route, there's more connectivity to it, more networking. Writing is a very lonely business. And I think there's, just when the few times I've had the opportunity to be in a group of editors or agents, it it just feels, it's just more interactive, and it's not, I don't even know if it's an ego thing as much as it is a ability to create those connections, to have that credibility in the industry among your writing peers, And also, I'd be interesting to know how many self-published books, how many careers actually take off from it, as opposed to just having a novel published and reaching a certain desired target audience. But like I know, I started doing a little research earlier today, and I didn't know that Legally Blonde was self-published, and that certainly took off and
That seems
became
appropriate.
quite right. That you guys would like that. But then, like Colleen Hoover, for example, got started that way. It seems like a lot of like um, the what's the other one? Shades of Grey. That was in the like the ones that popped up. Just definitely seem to be more cultural phenomenons as opposed to just kind of classic um, literary or classic genres. Um, I think it's interesting. Of course, they eventually get picked up by publishers and turn into, movies and that sort of thing. But I did think it was interesting the type of self-publishing that took off. And it was a quick search. I'm sure there's many others, but that the first things that popped up were those kind of cultural, trendy types of books.
Yeah.
How someone more knowledgeable than me, how difficult is it for self-publish? Like, I know it used to be really difficult. Has it become easier for self-publishers to get into libraries? Because like, I think we all have like our dream goal, right? And like, I just want to see my book in a library because I love the library.
It is easier
Is it
now,
getting
I
easier?
think. Yeah,
Well,
they actually,
and
like, a lot
also
of the
some
print on demand.
libraries,
Yeah.
yeah, on demand for people who are walking through stacks that look like your background there, Dizzy. But also a lot of libraries have a big subscribership, we'll call it, who check out their books online, and that's, I don't know how you monetize that, but there's some way that you monetize that, uh, and and uh, and some of them are huge. There's a city in Florida, and I'm sorry I don't know that. Maybe somebody else does. That has like 1 billion subscribers. It might be Clearwater. It's some smaller city, and it's got a tourist presence, and everybody who goes through is encouraged to join their library. And once you join their library, you've got all kinds of rights to check out things. And it's I mean, it's easier, as Michael was saying, it's easier to get in for paper, but it's much easier to get in electronically. Uh, and that's a great feeling to have people read your work, to have a number of people read your work, and we get that satisfaction from Story Street Writers on our website, our website, storystreetwriters.com. Um, and I've recently had that experience from a contest that I was a part of, and the best thing about it was the readership, the number of people who read my submission. That's the best thing. I mean, I just saw Michelle smile when I said that, and I bet it's that she's had that experience in the last couple of weeks as well. That just
Absolutely.
getting out there, yeah, it's a great feeling.
Well, and then
Yeah,
we've talked about this before. It's about what are your goals? What are your publishing goals? Like I love what Josie just said. I want to see my book in a library someday. When we talk about where we submit to, is your goal prestige? Is your goal number of readers? Is your goal, it could be multiple things, combination of things. I think the more people that read something I've written, the better I feel about it, just because I think that's my ultimate goal. Yes, I would love to see people sitting on the beach, multiple people walk by and see them holding my novel one summer. That would be really cool. But regardless of how they're reading it, I just hope there are people out there that want to read what I write.
and Josie, I want to point out that you do have a book in the library uh, at Harvard. And the next time I'm in Boston, I'm going to stop by and check that book out.
Thanks, Jack. That's very true. Each of us do. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
think.
I didn't do thesis,
Oh,
but yeah,
yeah.
yeah. The only one I still have to have something in the library.
Um. Yeah, I don't think that there's like a correct like answer. It is a personal thing. Like but I think it's worth like for me, I have been a, kind of convinced to take a harder look at smaller presses, even if I don't get because circulation isn't necessarily everything. Like you want your book to also be believed in and be memorable. Like at the end of the day, it's not myself that I'm trying to to do this for. It's for the what I'm writing, right? That's what I and it deserves. I have to believe, and if like talking about submitting, I have to believe in it enough to get it, regardless of how I feel about it for myself, like get it the place that it deserves to be. Like I think my book deserves to be published. It deserves to be read, and it deserves somebody to read it and get something from it. And in that regard, do do I have to win the battle of every detail to get there versus having that be the end product, right? Like that's a little philosophical, but I guess we are coming up on the close to the hour here. So
Hey, Michael, I
um
just want to reiterate
yeah.
what you just said, though. I really like that. It's not about you and what you want for you, it's about what you want for your work. And I think that is such a good way to end the conversation.
Well, I've thought
Prioritizing
of
the
that.
art, the work, instead
Yeah.
of the person, the writer.
I've
Yeah, can I
had to
suggest
learn
that
that with
as we go
feedback.
around,
Yeah.
can I suggest that as we go around that we each and I'll do it, but if anybody doesn't want to, but that in addition to saying what we plan to do this coming week, can we maybe say just off the top of our heads what it is that we really at our core want for our work? Why we want for it? If that's all right.
That yeah.
Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, it's stupid of me to say that. It's unfair of me to say that and then go on mute and wait for someone to talk. Um, so for this next week, uh, I I I want to get. I feel like I've taken my experience with my son and come up with a really good way to conclude the book that I'm working on, as well as the second chapter that's going to sort of foreshadow part of the end of the book. And and so I want to build out that structure some, and I want to really get a sense of the whole work. And then I also have a bit of memoir writing that I'm supposed to complete this week for another couple of people, and I'm going to do that. That's going to happen for sure. I'm committed to that, even if I have to stay up all night, a couple of nights. And for me, my writing, I was thinking about it like what do I want for my writing, and uh, I want to I want to make my children proud. I know that's part of it. What I really want to do is for when I'm gone, for them and for my grandchildren to have a part of me that they can read And I wanted to be a part of me that was deeply considered and deeply personal. Uh, so that's more than, the memories or the stories that people might tell them about me. It's this work that I sweat over. Uh, and I think that's what I want for my work. And that's what I want for my part of what I want for my children and my grandchildren.
I'm going to piggyback on Jack because that's half of mine. I lost my mom when she was 47. I was 25, and all the pieces of paper I have left, cards, letters from her, I can hear her voice. And that's part of my goal, is for my children and grandchildren to hear my voice still in my words long after I'm gone. But I think another goal is, Elisa was in Italy, I guess last week, week before, and she sent me this picture of these little saint stickers. And she said, "Oh, this reminds me of Camille, which is one of my characters. And I want my characters to be real in people's heads, like to be people." And that meant so much to me that you sent that, Elisa. It was just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, she thinks about Camille when she's not in my work, which I love that. Um, and what I'm going to do next week, I'm going to get back to Camille because since I turned my thesis in, I've taken a little bit of a break from my novel, and I need to get back on it. So I will be joining those calls in the morning and start dedicating myself to it again.
It's a common theme. Done with thesis, taking break. That's
I can jump in. I'm so glad. Yeah, I just saw this little. They were like I don't know. I think there were keychains and of all the saints. Yeah, and I was like, Camille would have loved this. Anyway, for me, well, next week I have two finished projects, and I have another one that I mean, I also wrote the whole novel and then I let it rest. And I started. I don't know if I told you that I read the first page and I'm like, I didn't even remember having written that part, like the way that it starts. Like, how could I have forgotten how what I wrote in the first page? And also talking about things that come from your life. It's also, I mean, as you can tell, I have a really strong relationship, very tight relationship with my son, because it's something that we shared. One night he woke up and he came over. I was watching TV. My husband was already asleep, and I was watching TV in the TV room. And he came. I don't know. He was like 4 or 5, and he says, "Mom, that it doesn't hurt to die." I remember he was so young, and so he cuddled into my chest, and I said, "No, it's fine, baby. Don't worry." I don't even remember what I told him, but then I went over to his bed and I fell asleep with him, and I that's how the story starts. This relationship, mom and son. Anyway, I didn't even remember that I had written that, but I'm gonna go back to that story. I want to plan it out, see what changes need to be done, so I can start rewriting and reworking that. It's been like laying, it's been resting for 2 years, so I want to pick that up. And then I also want to make the story that I wrote for today longer. And as of what I want for my work, I think, and I remember I met the day I met Alex in class with in the art of the pitch. We had to talk for 1 minute in what moves us, like what I don't remember exactly what we were supposed to say, but I could have. I mean, I'm a easy talker, and Alex isn't. But it was great having that interaction. But I was talking about what motivates you. I think it's or what you like. I think it was what you like, what do you love, and I said that I love um, being there for people, inspiring people. That's I think the reason why I became a teacher and now a guidance counselor, and everything has to do with being with people and like pushing people to their highest potential. And I think that's the main objective of my work. I want to move people. I want to inspire. I want to reach to touch a lot of hearts. That's the main goal of my work. So obviously I want to make my kids proud, and I've they've been with me in the whole process and the whole journey, and they've been through the struggles and through the victories. And when I get published and I get rejected, I always share with them so that they can see that that's life, and you have to so that they learn from my experience. But yeah, I want to move people. I want to touch hearts. That's what I want to do with my writing.
All right. For next week, I have been working through my typewritten pages, and I'm gonna keep doing that, making changes and working through those. So that's my plan for the week, and then would like to maybe carve out like a day or something to at least attempt a short story, so that I can work on that off and on and get something that I can start sending out again. Um, and for my work, I think like it goes back to wanting it to be in a library. Like I want it for people who maybe I want my books to be there for people who maybe don't have other access to books. Because like where I grew up, I couldn't even use a library because it was so rural that like you had to live in the town to use the library or pay to be in the library, like to be able to use the library. And so that wasn't an option for me. And so like I want my books available to people. Like that's I want people to be able to get their hands on them in any way possible. I'm gonna like I know that if I get published, one of the things I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a whole bunch of them and I'm going around to little free libraries and putting them everywhere because not because I'm trying to get my name out, not because I'm trying to like, but because like I want people to have books. I want people to be able to get their hands on books. So
Maybe your short story should be about that little girl who didn't have access to a library.
I could do that.
Kind of manifest right your way through the write it, and then it's kind of like Jack's future DeLorean coming back. Um, yeah, I think my goal right now is to get through this next week of like my wife's degree is obviously the priority right now, and well, the baby is the priority, but having getting back to like more regular work on my regular stuff is important, because yeah, it's because I do believe in the story. So I think my goal would be to be banned. I want to write a banned book for that helps people out because it's banned, and it's banned because it helps people out. So
There's
there,
someone
That's
else in this group that
fantastic.
probably wants that. That's the guy.
yeah.
That is
So
fantastic.
You're speaking Jack's
that's
language.
yeah. I think that's my goal. I want to write a book that is banned for all the right reasons. So that people need to find it because it's important to them. So um,
I don't
anyway,
think I put that on my query letter, by the way.
oh hell yeah, I want the right agent, don't I?
Yeah.
So I used to do that with actually. So true story. Last time I had to go do a job search, I put I had like this very straightforward, very businessy resume, and I had a job, and I was looking for something better, and I'm like, you know what? If I want something better, I don't want this straightforward businessy place that's going to corporate me to death. So I started actually putting fun stuff in my jokes and stuff in my actual experience, making it a little bit more like if somebody was going to be like, you're not taking this seriously, we don't want you here. I'm like, well, you're not taking this the right way. I don't want to be there. So self kind of filtering out the job that I was in that way instead of the other way around. They don't need to filter me. Like, so that was so yeah, I think maybe I will make that my goal. So, oh
I do that when I meet new people.
yeah.
Yeah, I say things that I know could be a deal breaker, and
Good idea.
I don't have time for
Yeah,
it.
that's a nice boundary.
Mhm.
Like, this is me.
A lot of people we do that the other way around. We probably shouldn't. We were like, oh, let's try and not offend people who we probably need probably need to be offended more often in their life because, you know, they do.
Yep.
All right, so guys, if you're watching this on the replay, I know I haven't seen much chatter in the stream chat, but if you're watching this on the replay, obviously we'll try and put some useful stuff in the show notes here. Drop us your goals. Like, why are you here? Why are you here? Like, we're doing this writing live stream thing, striving novelists. We're all striving novelists, right? That's the idea, and trying to support each other, find some help in our common struggle. So, drop a line in there. Head on over. We obviously, you know, hit our newsletter. Importantly, you know, if you have a chance, whether you hit this live or not, you know, we're doing our submission party again next week. Do your own submission party. Get yourself something good to eat or drink or something. Jump on, have some motivation. Look at what, you know, watch our stream or whatever, but just get in and submit some stuff, because that's part two. Write the book and then believe it in enough to find a way to get it out there and give it its life. Like, whether that's submitting 50 times to get until you find someone who's got space for it, or publishing it, getting the right publisher, going through finding all that agent, or finding a new path. So anyway, join us on stories3writers.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Our next contest is coming up. Look for an announcement for that in the next week or so. See you guys on later.
Okay.